Good morning, everybody. Hope people can hear me. I think somebody is sharing their screen already. I don't know if that was an error, but don't worry. Can I just have a little thumbs up from somebody? Can you hear me okay? Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Emma. Just give it a minute just for everybody to join.
I'll just put the audio on so we can.
So I'm going to just join that in from the UK chat. It's just because it was linked into my laptop too much.
Morning, everybody. We'll get going shortly. We'll just give it another few moments just to let people join. Okay, right, we'll make a move anyway, and obviously people can join as and when. Is there anybody on this meeting who it has not been to this meeting before, apart from obviously the speakers? Jill, you haven't? No,
I haven't. No, they used to be on a Monday. I don't work on Monday.
yeah. Oh, right. We've been swapping them around just to try and fit all sorts of people in. So if there is any best days people, I'd be open to shifting things around to suit as and when. But Jill, you've been in obviously the programme for quite a while anyway, haven't you?
Yeah,
so
yeah, I have, yeah.
Good to
Thanks.
see you. Thanks. Okay, I can see a few people in a room, which is great. Is it the Alfred Wainwright room? Hello, there are 3 people there. I can't see your name, so obviously, hello. That's great. Okay, well, we'll make a move anyway. We've only got an hour, so for those of you who don't know me, my name's Tracy Smith. I am Senior Commissioning Manager within the North East North Cumbria ICB, and I host this monthly meeting for path advisors and work coaches across the region. You're all doing sort of similar roles out there as part of the work and health agenda, which is great. And obviously you are at the forefront of driving some of this programme. So, you know, it's really, we're here to support you. So today's session, I did send out an email. I wanted to welcome Tim Price, Emma Brownrigg and Ben Moore. I've got these people have come on today because we've, you know, again, this is about you lot. It's trying to equip you and arm you with the right information and any sort of learning or development that you might need. If I can just ask people to stay on mute while speakers are talking, and then it says any echo. But we'll start off with Tim. So Tim is joining us to share some insights of the evaluation from an advisor's perspective. Hi, Tim. Can I bring you in? Do you want to introduce yourself? Where are you from and everything else? That's great.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Tim Price. So I'm a researcher at Newcastle University, and I'm working on the qualitative portion of the evaluation of the WorkWell service. So the findings that I have to share today, the evaluation is ongoing. The findings I have to share today are from sort of the first stage of the evaluation that worked with work coaches to learn sort of the strengths and benefits of the program and also identify areas for improvement. This evaluation is also going to involve GPs and other practice staff and patients as well when it's finished. And data recruitment or data collection from patients is ongoing at this time, and work coaches is finished. So that's what I'll share with you today. So I should be able to share my screen here. All right. We're able to see that? We're good to go?
Yeah, that's fine. I can see that, Tim.
Great, thank you. So yeah, we're based at Newcastle, and Dr. Courtney McNamara is the principal investigator on this project. So just the background here, I think everybody's familiar with the Workwell service, so I'm not really going to spend any time here, but this evaluation is of sort of the NENC ICB area service. So our evaluation is really, like I said, about trying to understand the experiences of people who are delivering and participating in the program. And we're trying to identify areas for improvement, as well as the strengths that are there. So like I said, we've done 8 interviews with work coaches, and GP interviews or other practice staff, people who are referring into the service, and patients are forthcoming. You can see the topic guide that we use in the work coach interviews on the side of the screen there. Really, the topic guide is sort of about exploring just their thoughts around what they've done, what's worked, what hasn't. And it's led to the generation of 3 themes from the work coach data, which are strengths of the program, challenges that work coaches are facing, and then some emerging questions, things that work coaches have us thinking about, but don't necessarily have any clear answers at this point. And I should say too, the work coaches have been spread throughout the NENC region. So there's a few different practice models. Each place does it a little bit differently, but we have some good representation across those practice models. So while it is a qualitative study, so it's not generalizable in the strictest sense, it does provide insight into sort of the complexity of experiences that you see across the region. So the first theme is around the strengths of the program. And one of the biggest strengths by far and away that comes out in these interviews is that work coaches are really excited about the external services that they have access to, that they can refer people into. And they feel this way for a few reasons. The first one that's come up a lot is that they're able to make really direct referrals. So they're in close contact with these services. And because they're in close contact, they're able to say to their clients, look, how about I refer you to this service? And then they're able to follow up with that service and say, hey, have you been in touch with so-and-so? It's that really close connection that they feel like is making it really easy to get people engaged with these services. And the feeling is that this is much better than a sort of signposting model because it makes it much easier to make sure the person gets in touch, gets that follow through. If any sort of problems come up along the way, they're able to troubleshoot them in real time. And the other strength of sort of this close connection between services is that it allows for people to move really quickly to sort of get in and get that support they need. And that's facilitated by things like the personal health budget. You can see the work coach in that sort of bottom quote there talking about how the personal health budget really facilitates referrals into services that wouldn't be available otherwise. And that is, really helpful because it lets people start making progress really quickly, which they felt like was really important. So they had a connection to a whole range of different services, but they felt of the work coaches I've spoken to, the consensus has been that they feel really well resourced in terms of places to send people out to. The second strength of the program is just the scope of the program and the sort of 12-week model. Work coaches in the interviews have talked a lot about how important the rapport building and relationship building and sort of trust building processes have been. And interestingly, this is something that is starting to come out in the patient data as well, as people feeling like, it's really interesting to me the way patients talk about their work coaches. One of the things I've noticed is they refer to their work coach by name, whereas the GP is just the GP. And I think that really speaks to the relationship building that we see going on, and that came out in the work coach data as well. It's just a feeling that because there's 12 weeks and because they have an hour each appointment with these patients, they're able to really build that trust and get to know people and take a really person-centered approach to what does this person want to get out of this, and then to work with them to do it. So it's very different from your typical GP appointment. It's much more flexible than some existing services are. And it really allowed patients to build up confidence in their work coach and feel like, okay, this is a person I can trust. This is a person I can be honest with about what I want, what's working, what isn't working. And it really allowed for that gradual progress. Not everything has to happen at once. There's time, for this to sort of play out and to build that trust. So that is something that has been really clear in all of the work coach interviews, is this tremendous strength that the scope of the program allows. So there were some challenges that we talked about in the work coach interviews, so we'll move on to those now. The first challenge that has been present in differing extents in most of the work coach interviews is a feeling that they have encountered a lot of inappropriate referrals, and the reasons for inappropriate referrals varied. In some cases, it was people who their needs were just really far beyond the scope of the program. It was very clear these were people who were not going to be able to get back to work on sort of any sort of manageable timeline. It was people who already had a very clear plan to return to work and didn't feel like they needed any support at all. And it was people with no intention of returning to work. So that might be because they had decided their disability was such that it sort of precluded a return to work. It might be that they had just decided, one work coach shared the example of someone who had just decided to retire and was really happy with that. They were able to do that. So, they didn't need the support of a work coach at all. But this was really interesting because, of course, this is not the way that sort of we imagine the program is intended to be implemented. So there's something going on here where there's a bit of a breakdown somewhere in the process, and we're trying to figure out where exactly that is. We have to keep in mind that we don't have the data from GPs and other practice staff members, so we don't know, but the work coaches felt that this was coming from the GP side, feeling like they were maybe, whether it was GPs didn't understand the scope of the program or they were referring a little quicker than they necessarily should have been. Not super clear, but some work coaches felt like more than 50% of the referrals they were being given were people who were not right for the program. Just to give one example from a work coach of someone who is not appropriate, a work coach told me about a patient that had been referred to them who had been in employment for a very long time, really wanted to get back to work, was in contact with their employer, and was, getting all the adjustments in place for a phased return. Everything was good. The only problem was that they couldn't start that phased return until they had a consult with rheumatology. And they had an appointment in place, but the timeline was such that they couldn't be seen for, I think it was about 6 weeks. So this person met with the work coach, and the work coach said, you know, what can I do to support you? And this person said, well, I'm just waiting for my appointment. Can you get it any faster? And the work coach said, you know, no, unfortunately not. And that was it. You know, there was nothing this person needed that the work coach could really provide. And the work coach felt like really this was someone who should not have been referred. It should have been picked up that this person had what they needed in place. So that's sort of what we're talking about there. The other challenge that work coaches identified is also early in the process. That was that many of the people who are referred, whether they are appropriate or not, did not have a good understanding of what the program was. They felt like, you know, work coaches felt like these people had not been told what WorkWell is for and what it can offer. And there was a really wide range of inaccurate beliefs about the program that work coaches reported. That was believing that WorkWell was linked to benefits enforcement. So people saying, you know, well, I'm here because I don't want to lose my benefits, and the work coach explaining, you know, that's not what's going to happen. And then the person sort of losing interest. And also, you know, expecting some form of support without wider engagement. The personal health budget was often involved in this. So the feeling from work coaches was that GPs were saying, you know, if you engage with this work coach, they can get you a gym membership. They can get you, you know, massage therapy. They can get you whatever the case may be. So the person turns up to the work coach and says, well, I want a gym membership. But they don't want to engage with the program in a more holistic way. And there was a feeling that this resulted in reduced engagement because a lot of people, when they learned the reality of the program, were not interested in continuing. There's also a sense that there was a bit of initial mistrust because people just didn't know who this was, you know, what was going on. And it meant work coaches spent a lot of time clarifying the purpose of the program to people who were already, you know, supposed to be getting involved in the program. So two big challenges there, both interestingly at the early side of the sort of program pathway, if you will. So people who are being, you know, the trouble seems to be at the start of the process rather than something, you know, once clients are engaged, the feelings were very positive. And then we had the last theme, which is just emerging questions. And that was really around outcome measures and feeling like the existing outcome measures might not fully reflect the impact of the program. Work coaches have talked a lot about the changes they see in their clients that are really hard to quantify. People who, you know, at the start of the program were often late, and you know, just a general sense that this was someone who had just sort of rolled out of bed and, you know, gotten in the meeting and wasn't really taking it seriously, to feeling like at the end you had people who were, you know, showing up and presenting really professionally. They were excited and engaged and really, you know, talking about future plans and all this stuff. And work coaches worried that that sort of progress, while really, really important in their view, isn't necessarily captured in the outcome measures. There were also some logistical challenges here. Many people who wanted to change jobs were actively searching for work at the end of the 12 weeks, but hadn't actually started. And some were close to employment in that either they were about to return to work or you know, they were just sort of going through the onboarding process, but hadn't technically started yet. So there was worry that these people were, you know, if we had looked at them just a bit longer, they would have been a success. But in the strictest sense, they were not a successful outcome of WorkWell. So there was some concern that some of the benefits of the program might be missed because they're a little less tangible than a strict in employment, not in employment. So there were no answers to this question. It's really just an interesting sort of thing to come out of the data. So in summary, the work coaches, generally speaking, have felt really positive about the program, feeling like it is having a real noticeable impact and that there's some real strengths to the model. There are some challenges, though, especially at the early stages of someone's engagement around the inappropriateness of referrals and the way that the program is being communicated to patients. We expect to get a little more clarity on this as we speak to patients and as we speak to GPs, but that is where the evaluation stands now. So that's me. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to take them. I'm not sure how we're doing for time. So
we've got a couple of minutes. That's great. Thanks very much, Tim. I think from people online, I don't know, could you know, things like the inappropriate referrals for those obviously in those roles. Can I just have a show of hands? Do you still think that is happening around that 50% mark? Yeah, I can say Anthony's just put his hand up. Priscilla, yeah. It's almost like, well, we need to obviously get better. And it's, I've written a question here. What can we do to you know, to address that? We have got our GP lead, which is Dr. Martin Weatherhead, who's offered his kind of services out to go and speak to a lot of the GPs across the region. So, you know, we are sort of considering what can we do just so those inappropriate referrals are not being made. Because at the end of the day, it's a waste of resource, it's a waste of time when you could be seeing people who really genuinely need, you know, this interaction. People have still got hands up. Is that because you want to ask a question? Nicola, please come in. Thank you.
Hey, Tracy. We are having issues actually getting in contact with patients initially. The referral forms are coming through, but there's no box ticked to specify which contact the patient would like. So we kind of on the back foot. So we're trying to ring them, but if you're ringing off a number that the patient doesn't know, 9 times out of 10 they're not answering us.
Right, okay. I suppose what's the answer to that? The answer is we need whoever's making the referral to say that person wants to be contacted and give them some idea of where the number will be coming from, or a number that they'll see on their phone that will come up.
Or even that we can send the text to them straight off to just explain who we are.
Yeah, so I think that's something that we can sort of field and see if we can get picked up somewhere at the start of the pathway. That's a good point, Nicola. And it's things like that you know can be such a small thing but actually make a massive difference. So that's definitely. Who else have we got? Hayley.
Yeah. I obviously manage the PAS team, and with regards to the referrals, I'm wondering if the reasoning behind that they're saying potentially some of them aren't the right criteria is because what will be happening is obviously receptionists and that kind of thing will be referring people based on the fit no criteria. So by actually trying to put an extra measure in place, that's going to create more work for the GPs of questioning around why would they want to be referred, what is the reasoning for that. And I think that potentially is where the difficulty is going to come in of, is this then going to become more time consuming for GPs, practice managers to ask these questions before then being referred to the Workwell programme, where with PAS, you know, the fit note criteria is if they've got 2 or more fit notes, they're automatically referred, and we then deal with them of whether they're appropriate or not appropriate, again with the benefit question, because PAS has been around quite a while. They may think it's similar to that service of benefit advice and that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering if that is potentially why you may be getting a lot of referrals, because they won't have the time to analyse what is the reason behind it. Why would you need to do that? Why do you want to be referred to Workwell? Because that's then going to generate more work within the surgeries.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And I don't know, Tim, if that was sort of mentioned across any of the discussions you've had.
Yeah, It has certainly come up that, you know, sort of what you said first, this idea that people are just, the referrals may be made on the basis of the sick note criteria. Certainly that's come up. It's hard to say because of course we haven't spoken to anyone on the practice side yet. So there's a part of the story missing. But certainly the feeling from work coaches has been that a lot of practices appear to be just sort of saying, okay, you have a fit note, you get a referral to work well. And then it's sort of left on the work coaches to assess, okay, are you a good fit for this program, more broadly speaking?
And I mean, hopefully things will improve over time, because I think it's, you know, it's still quite in its infancy. I know it's been running for over a year now, but, you know, in terms of a service, it is still quite new. So, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. Just reading the messages in the chat there for a built-in text message where a patient can receive text reminders or missed call messages. Yeah, it's things like that. It's been savvy with tech, isn't it? I like Fleur's message there. Leave a basic message and then phone back again so that they'll know what to expect. So yeah, it's you know what works, and actually share what works. So this is great that people are going to do these sorts of things. Oliver Toby. You have a question? Can you put your mic down? I can't hear you.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what we've been doing in North Cumbria is to deliver presentations to the GP surgeries. So we've been going to like their GP meetings to meet all the GPs and tell them what our criteria were, and also let them understand the kind of patients we are expecting from them. So, but the major challenge that we've encountered is that the only probably contacts that we have is like the PCN leads or their practice, the PCN leads, and the information there is not flowing directly to the people that really need to have that information. So I was in a digital inclusion trainee and I met lots of like the guys handling, let's say, the technical stuff in the surgeries. And I met two of them that said the same thing, that they have been expecting us to deliver a presentation to their GPs, but they've heard nothing back from their PCN leads, and they've been asking. So it was strange that we were sending information to like these PCN leads, we were chasing them up as an organization, and the information is not flowing down to the surgeries. So if there's any way we can probably work around that, because it seems all the effort we are putting into getting the information out there is not actually getting to the grassroots,
the right people,
so, to the right people. So that is actually the only observation. And from that little engagement, we secured presentation with the two surgeries independently without any involvement, and it was really positive, and we have it planned already. So
no, and that's being proactive, and that's brilliant. And I think, you know, sometimes down to capacity, people haven't got the time to do these sorts of things. But if it's worked for you and over North Cumbria, then that's super. We can reach out obviously to our neighbourhood leads and the project leads within the neighbourhood teams to try and support some of that activity. So that's definitely something I can sort of take forward to our operational meeting and say, you know, ask them what can you do? Can you deliver at a more local level? So I'm just looking at the chat and I'm conscious of time. So this is all great, and please keep popping things in the chat. I think what we'll do is if we'll just stop there and move on to our next speaker. Tim, thank you very much for your presentation. If you could share that with me, and I'll share it with the group, just so they've got that presentation to use for other staff. Thank you. So next, I'd like to bring in Emma. Emma Brownrigg is from the our regional poverty proofing team, and I just thought it would be useful to bring Emma in and so she can talk about some of the things that might be relevant to sort of PAS advisors and work coaches in the work that they do. Emma, please come in. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. Like Tracy says, I'm Emma Brownrigg. I work for a charity called Children North East. I'm the Poverty Proof and Health Team Manager. So it was really nice. It'll be really nice to tie into some of the things that Tim said. You know, we're quite aligned with some of the strengths that Tim was talking about in terms of that relational power, that's being able to spend time with people, and what we would always advocate is asking questions. That's where we generally start. So I will share my screen with you. And then I'll try and be on time, speak quick, say less, and hopefully there'll be some time for some questions at the end. And may the gods of Teams be kind to me and get this presentation up. There you go. Can everybody see
that? Yeah, great stuff. Thank you.
Brilliant. So you'll see that strap line at the bottom underneath poverty proofing, saying that we really do think about, you know, poverty is everybody's business. And, you know, building on what Tim was saying there, a lot of the people that you will be speaking to will be might be experiencing some type of poverty with being off work. You know, people say we're only ever 2 paychecks away from finding ourselves in a really difficult situation. And when people are off work or temporarily sick, or, you know, longer periods of ill health, it really does make a huge impact. So Children North East is a long-running charity. It's one of the longest-running regional charities. Despite the name, we don't just work with children, and we don't just work in the North East, so our work is nationally, but we do currently have a contract with the Nenkai CB. Our mission is that no activity or planned activity should ever identify or exclude those people who are living with the least resources. And our work started initially in schools. So it was a project that was commissioned by Newcastle University that wanted to find out what it was like living in poverty in the North East. So they gave out hundreds of disposable cameras, and we got thousands of photographs back and analysed that. And, you know, these were some of the photographs that came back, and on looking at them, it emerged that one of the worst places, one of the most identifiable places where poverty was seen was in schools. And so from that, poverty proof in the school day emerged. And from that, the health team emerged. And we work within health services, within the health team. We work with services to identify the enablers and barriers to access for people living in poverty. And these 3 pillars are kind of what underpins all of our work. So we've got voice. So at CNE, we recognise that to see real social change, you've got to hear the voice of those people affected by poverty. Just like Tim was saying, one of the real strengths of the Work Well programme is that ability to spend time with people, build those relationships, build that trust, and only then when, you know, people open up. So when we go into services, the vast majority of the work that we do is gathering patient voice about what they're finding difficult in terms of accessing those health services. And, you know, not just the difficulties, but what's working well. So that helps us understand what those barriers are. At place, in terms of place, we understand that the geography of a place is very different, and those barriers will be very different. So the Work Well coaches working in North Cumbria will be facing very, very different barriers to engagement and those onward referrals to somebody who is working in the centre of Newcastle. And then structural inequalities, you know, while tackling poverty can feel like almost sometimes unachievable and impossible, we know that the root causes of poverty are structural, and therefore that gives us reason for hope, because if we can change the structures, then we can, you know, alleviate some of these barriers for people. And those are the 3 real pillars of our work, and that just tells you a little bit about. So poverty proofing works in education, and that was our first kind of area in health, and we also work within culture and heritage. So what we offer is a kind of staged approach to intervention. Claire Mills has said there is some money available. So if after I've talked to you, you think, yeah, this is something that some of our teams could really benefit for, then go knocking on Claire's door, because hopefully she'll have a big pot of cash that she can give you. And we're not expensive, but we offer training. There is some actually free training available to you. So if you go on the Boost Learning Academy, and I'll put that link in the chat for you, there's 1 hour sessions there available on poverty awareness, on stigma and unconscious bias, and having those financial conversations. So it sounds like as coaches, you spend a lot of time talking to people. You will be highly, highly skilled at these conversations, but sometimes conversations around finances can feel a bit awkward for people, especially if people are giving you information about finances and then you're unsure of what to do with that information. Sometimes that puts people off even having those conversations. So on Boost, training is available, and they run usually morning time or lunchtime, so they can tie in with people's schedules, but also they are free until at least the end of March 2027. So please make the most of those and get yourself booked on, and that's kind of a dipping your toe in it. But we also have 3 hour training sessions for teams that we can do face-to-face or online, and that's really a more in-depth look at what the impacts of poverty can be on health. And then we do a series of workshops, and these can either be split over 3, or we could do it in one day. And these are more kind of bespoke for smaller teams. And really, it's a bit like an audit, which is the bit that comes next. But it's a smaller version, and it means that the teams are gathering the voice. So in the first session, you get some training, you get that 3 hour core training. And then we look at some questions and some conversation openers that you can ask your patients about what barriers they are facing to accessing your service or accessing the referrals that you're then going on to in terms of finances. And then we'll send you away to gather some of that voice. So it'll be about talking to the people that you're working with and seeing what those financial barriers are. And then on the third session, you bring all that voice back, and we'll do some action planning with you. And then hopefully as a team, you can negate some of those barriers. So whether it's with, working with Workwell or wider pieces of work, these are really good workshops for equipping you with having those financial conversations, gathering that voice, and then understanding what those barriers are. And then this is probably just worth mentioning, we also do full poverty proofing audits, and that's what we're currently commissioned to do within the ICB across all the 11 foundation trusts. So that's where we work with services and go in and we train the staff, we look at the patient pathway, and then we do the vast majority of the work that we do in that piece of work is gathering patient voice. So we'll sit and talk to patients. So whether that be in, we're doing a lot of work in maternity, in neonatal services, in a lot of IMSK and podiatry. And I know that's one of the focuses for Workwell this year, mental health services. So we gather all of that voice, and then all of that voice drives the report, the feedback and action planning around the barriers that we've uncovered in terms of accessing that service. So it's great evidential, it's great evidence for services to look at when they're kind of looking at DNA rates, and we prefer to call them could not be brought, and looking at things like waiting lists and things like that. So it's great evidence around why people aren't accessing the service. And really what all of this equates to is encouraging services to look at what you're doing through that poverty lens, to amplify the voices of those who are least heard, so that all the decision makers can have a little look at their service through somebody with the least resources. And having been on the other side of poverty proofing in my previous job, when I was in education and our school was poverty proofed, I was working in an area of really high deprivation. It really does change how you look at what your offer is, because I think when you get it right for the people with the least resources, you get it right for everybody ultimately, and you improve it for everybody. And these are the fundamentals really of poverty informed services. And I guess what I'd ask you to say is, how confident do you feel about talking about access and the financial barriers people are saying? So we always encourage asking, and it sounds like you guys are so well placed to do that. So you know, the first point of call is really to ask, then it's to listen. Truly listen to what people are telling you, and that's where the power of that time that you've got with those people and the trust that you build is really key. It's crucial to approach it from a blank slate and let the voices of patients and service users really guide us. Respect and dignity and genuine engagement are key. And then I guess it's about acting. It's about what can you actually do to remove some of those barriers. And if you can't act yourself, what can you advocate for at a higher level? And forums like this are, I guess, are a great place to do that. And in terms of poverty proofing in the Northeast, you know, I don't need to tell you that some of the rates of deprivation here are some of the highest in the country, particularly in terms of child poverty. And there's some real barriers that employees face, both in terms of accessing work, but also when they're off work, you know, transport barriers. And that goes back to those different challenges that you have within place, depending on different communities and that infrastructure there, debt and financial stress, child and other care and responsibility, and those irregular hours and insecure work, and all that impacts. So in terms of how we align to the WorkWell programme, well, we're doing lots of work within that year one focus for WorkWell. So we're doing lots of work in mental health services and have done so. MSK is a focus for at least 2 of our audits, and podiatry, and then women's health. So we're poverty proofing the women's health service in Gateshead and doing extensive work across maternity. And so I think in terms of like ongoing support, that's really good in terms of, you know, what we're seeing as barriers affecting these priority health groups. And it will only strengthen the WorkWell pathways for people struggling to stay in work. So in terms of what we could do to support, like I say, there's that training available for free, you know, which is a really good offer, and the training's really good. It's run by an actual live human, so it's not just a webinar that you point and press, and there's loads of good opportunities to ask questions. I guess what we would want that to do is kind of give you an insight as to how poverty affects engagement in terms of employment support and shared learning. And, you know, if you wanted to engage in some of those workshops, and ask Claire for a little pot of money to do that, building confidence around having those conversations around financial barriers and how to remove them is really key. So that, like I say, links into the workshops. So yeah, let's have a look. And I think we're about there. So if there's anybody got any questions about that.
That's great. Thanks, Emma. I've just popped the link in the chat for you from the Booster Learning Academy for the poverty proofing section. So people can have a look in there. That's great. Has anybody got any questions for Emma at all? Okay, I think like you say, you hit the nail on the head. That, you know, as advisors and work coaches, they're mega equipped to do, you know, to understand some of these issues that people are facing. And I think you know, the more we know about this and any themes that you know, can be shared, I think that the better we can address things, can't we? So that's great. Emma, thanks ever so much for coming along today.
Not a problem.
If anybody has got any questions, please pop them in the chat. You know, we can come back to them or answer you direct. But please do reach out to the poverty proofing team if you need to. And finally, the last sort of 15-20 minutes, I want to bring in Ben. So obviously this part of the session is mainly for our PAS advisors who are DWP staff. So if anybody's not DWP staff or I mean, please stay on if you want to, but I'm just saying it's going to be more relevant to the PAS advisors. Thanks, Emma. So Ben, if I can bring you in, this is about the minimum data set process implementation plan, isn't it? Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. And if there is a drop off, I won't take it personally.
No,
So thanks, Tracy, for inviting me along today. So I'm Ben. I'm the program manager for the Clinical Digital Resource Collaborative. And what we do is we develop clinical resources directly within System 1 and EMIS for NHS clinicians and community services as part of our contract with the ICB. In terms of the WorkWell programme, CDRC has been supporting the referral form development into the work coaches and also the conversion of the minimum data set from an Excel format into a Word format so it can be used within the clinical systems. I've been supporting Claire, Tracy and co regarding the minimum data set workflow. I've developed hopefully a easy to follow workflow model, which I'll just share on my screen now. Tracy, can you just give me a nod to see if you can see that? Yeah, perfect. So as you can see on the screen here, this is a minimum data set diagram, kind of a workflow for how to conduct the process from contacting the patient all the way through to completing the minimum data set. It's worth noting that this is not the final version. There will be a final version released in due course. However, we are relating on a few questions to be answered, namely regarding the SNOMED codes that are going to be used within the minimum data set and for the evaluation. Ben Anderson has been to NHS Digital directly to discuss the hopefully approval of the WorkWell minimum data set coding. Once that's confirmed or denied, we'll have a mitigating action in place in case it is denied. If it's confirmed, we use the coding that's on the screen here. It's also worth noting that the new minimum data set won't contain patient identifiable information. So what we're going to do, we're going to replace the patient name and NHS number with a patient anonymized identifier on both System 1 and EMIS, so that when you do send the minimum data set to a centralized inbox, it will contain no patient identifiable information. We've had confirmation from the next legal team, that that's fine and it passes their legal checks. So I find that doesn't breach any GDPR or anything like that. And finally, CDRC are also going to be developing an SOP alongside what I'm going to walk through on the screen, just for those PAS workers of WorkWell coaches using the clinical systems and may not be familiar with how to use and navigate the systems. We're going to do a step-by-step guide on how to kind of improve that process for you. So in terms of going through the minimum data set workflow, you can see the key on the top left-hand side for what's a process, what's a question, and coding. So these are color-coded just to make it slightly easier for use. So depending on whether you're doing a retrospective start, which is using the CDRC search to identify these patients retrospectively, or prospectively, there's only one step difference. So once you've either retrospectively or prospectively identified the patient, you review that patient, assess their eligibility, and contact them to discuss the workbook program. If they consent or not. If there's no further action. If yes, you'll add the code and continue through the workflow process. So as you can see, there's various yes or no answers, no being red and highlighted, yes being green and highlighted as well. So all you'll do is work through these processes with the patient in front of you, add the relevant code if required. You can work through this process, very straightforward, added codes if appropriately. And then once you get to the minimum data set workflow model, you'll complete that minimum data set with the patient with you. That may take one session, it may take multiple sessions. It depends on the patient that you have. And then once that's completed, you'll raise a task with your GP practice so that they can send that to a centralized inbox. Once that's been sent to a centralized inbox, there'll be a small team who will collate all the minimum data sets and collate it into a master data set, and that'll be sent for evaluation data capture. So I hope it's a very simple to follow work process. This work process will be embedded within the SOP. So you'll send this out as a singular document and also involved in the wider SOP that we'll develop for navigating the System 1 unit, navigating the EMIS unit, how to access the form, what to do at what stage, what code to add at what stage, how to raise a task, and then how to send the minimum data set to the appropriate centralized inbox. So it doesn't look like there's many steps on there. However, the SOP will go into more detail from there. So I did tell Tracy I wouldn't take a full 15 minutes. I've only taken 3. So a bit quicker than I had even anticipated. So I'll pause there for questions. I'll just stop sharing my screen just in case there's any questions initially. If there isn't, I can share this minimum data set diagram workflow as is now, but I'll be worth noting that isn't the final version as of yet. Is there any questions regarding that initially?
Thanks, Ben. Is there any hands up there? I think, oh, sorry, Jill, please come in.
Hello, sorry. So you mentioned giving the patient a unique code. How will we then identify if we want to update that patient details at a later date? How will we know which unique code related to that patient?
So the unique code is specific to each patient. So if you're completing the minimum data set within System 1 or EMIS, you'll be able to save a version of that minimum data set to the patient's record. So regardless of whether that's been partially completed or completed, you can save a version of that minimum data set to the patient record, and then you can access that at a later date. We're also going to include a little alert box next to the minimum data set to see when it was actioned and when it has been seen, so you can see if it's partially completed or fully completed.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Any other questions? I think that was one from me. Just looking at your floor. I suppose at the start that it's going to be different people doing that initial thing, isn't it? So you know you're going to have perhaps the GP or the GP admin staff who are either doing the searches to then forward them on to the WorkWell service. So is that going to be in the SOP of the different people who are going to be involved in that flow? You know, I don't want advisors, particularly if advisors are new, you know, they're going to look at that and think, oh, is that all for me? No, you're going to be just picking up a section of that. So
yeah, so what we can do, we can either color code it so it's specific staff members, or we can just put an asterisk and list the staff members involved in specific stages, or have a unique figure or a unique character to highlight which individual is completing which stage, just so you know what you need to conduct as opposed to doing the whole thing.
Oh, that'd be good. I think that makes it just to be as helpful as we possibly can. I mean, if there is any, I guess if there is any asks from staff of how to, you know, make this better, it might not be, you know, realised at the moment, but once the process is sort of embedded and people start using it, you know, we would want to get the feedback, wouldn't we? So, you know, we need to make this as least onerous for people as we possibly can. But, you know, I think previous sessions, we've tried to really advise staff that, you know, that we need to collect as much data as we can for people. And hence the reason why we're trying to automate a lot of stuff. You know, the more information we know about this, the more we can evaluate it, the more we can sort of show how successful or not it's been for people, and look at the themes like Tim was talking about earlier. You know, some of the themes that we're seeing, how do we address those themes? Can't do any of that without your, you know, the staff who were at the call phase, speaking to the patients, completing the information, and such like. So, you know, I'm just don't need to teach my granny to suck eggs, as they say, but you know, this is about you and supporting you as those frontline workers, really, in the best way that we possibly can. So please do, you know, shout out if there's things that you want to change or things that you think would be better. But no, if there's no further questions, thank you very much, Ben, for that, and thank you to my other speakers as well. We will have another session next month. Hopefully not too many people will be on holiday, and we'll think of some topics. If you have got any particular topics that you do want to hear about or would like some more information on, please, you know, let us know. This is about equipping you as those advisors and coaches. So yeah, please do reach out. Thank you very much, everybody. I shall send out some brief notes and a link to the YouTube playlist once it's uploaded, and you'll be able to access this video afterwards. Thanks very much. See you all next month. Take care now. Bye.
Thank you.